The mess hall fell silent when Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen walked through the doors with 4 Krath cubs trailing behind her like ducklings following their mother. Every species in the galactic station stopped eating mid-bite. Forks clattered against plates. Conversations died in alien throats. The Krath were apex predators from a death world so brutal that even the Galactic Council had labeled it Forbidden Territory. Their homeworld boasted gravity 3 times that of Earth, oceans filled with acid, and storms that could strip flesh from bone. The adult Krath stood 8 feet tall on powerful digitigrade legs, possessed retractable claws that could slice through steel, and had rows of serrated teeth designed for tearing meat. They were the bogeymen of the galaxy, the monsters parents used to scare children into behaving. And Sarah had 4 of them following her to lunch. The cubs were smaller than adults, only reaching Sarah's shoulder, but they were still terrifying to most species. Their scales rippled with colors that shifted based on their mood, currently displaying curious oranges and cautious yellows. Their eyes, large and reflective like a cat's, tracked every movement in the room with predatory precision. Sarah grabbed a tray and moved through the lunch line as if nothing unusual was happening. The Zentari serving staff pressed themselves against the far wall, their tentacles curling protectively around their bodies. She scooped some kind of protein mash onto her plate, added vegetables that looked vaguely Earth-like, and grabbed a juice container. Behind her, the cubs mimicked her movements with surprising precision. The smallest one, who Sarah had nicknamed Pip, stood on his hind legs to reach the tray dispenser. His claws clicked against the metal as he carefully pulled one free. The sound echoed through the silent room like gunshots. "Easy there, buddy," Sarah said without turning around. "Use both hands. You almost dropped it last time." Pip chittered softly, a sound that most species associated with Krath hunting calls right before they struck. In the mess hall, someone whimpered, but Sarah knew it was just Pip's way of acknowledging her instruction. The cub adjusted his grip and successfully retrieved his tray. The other 3 cubs, Razor, Scales, and Ghost, followed suit. They moved through the line with an awkward mixture of deadly grace and childish clumsiness. When Razor tried to serve himself the protein mash, he squeezed the serving spoon too hard and crushed it. The handle bent at an angle that made it useless. "Razor, that's the 3rd one this week," Sarah sighed, but there was affection in her voice rather than anger. "Remember what we practiced? Gentle grip. You're strong enough to hurt without meaning to." Razor's scales flushed embarrassed purple. He made a low rumbling sound in his chest, apologetic and soft. Sarah reached over and helped him serve his food with a new spoon, her small human hands working alongside his clawed ones. This casual interaction sent waves of shock through the watching crowd. Humans were known for being crazy, but this was beyond anything most species had witnessed. The Krath were not pets. They were not trainable. They were killing machines that the galaxy avoided at all costs. Yet here was this human, treating them like they were children on a field trip. Sarah found an empty table near the viewport, one large enough to accommodate her whole group. She sat down and the cubs arranged themselves around her in a protective semicircle. Their positioning was not random. Ghost, the eldest and largest, took the seat with the best view of the entrance. Razor covered the right flank. Scales watched the left. Pip, the youngest, sat directly next to Sarah, close enough that his tail curled around the leg of her chair. The cubs began eating, and it was not a pretty sight. Krath cubs had not yet mastered fine motor control. They tore into their food with enthusiasm, making sounds that were equal parts adorable and terrifying. Pip got protein mash on his snout and made frustrated clicking noises until Sarah reached over with a napkin and wiped it clean. "You've got to slow down," she told him. "Food's not going anywhere." From across the mess hall, a group of Valorian diplomats stared in horrified fascination. Valorians were a rabbit-like species, prey animals with every instinct screaming at them to run. One of them, braver or more foolish than the others, approached their table. "Excuse me, Lieutenant Commander," the Valorian said, his voice shaking. His long ears were pinned flat against his skull in terror. "I must ask, how are you not concerned for your safety? The Krath are natural predators. They are dangerous." Sarah looked up from her meal, genuinely confused by the question. "Dangerous? These guys?" She gestured at the cubs, who had paused their eating to watch the newcomer with interest. "They're babies. Well, older babies, but still babies. Babies that could tear you apart," the Valorian insisted. "So could a human baby if you gave it enough time and motivation," Sarah replied with a shrug. "Look, I get that they look scary to you. They're predators, your prey. That's basic biology. But they're also kids who needed someone to look after them." Pip chittered and pressed closer to Sarah, his tail tightening around her chair leg. She absently reached down and scratched behind his head ridge, in the spot she had learned he liked. His scales rippled to a contented blue-green. The Valorian's eyes went wide. "You domesticated them?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "You can't domesticate a sentient species. That would be slavery. These are my teammates. I'm training them." "Training them for what?" "To be part of the crew. To live alongside other species peacefully. To use their natural abilities for good instead of just survival." This answer clearly did not satisfy the Valorian, but before he could ask more questions, an alarm blared through the station. The emergency lights flashed red. A mechanical voice announced a hull breach in Section 7, followed by reports of an unidentified hostile boarding the station. Every species in the mess hall erupted into panic. Tables overturned as people scrambled for the exits. The Valorian who had been questioning Sarah disappeared into the crowd without another word. In seconds, the organized lunch period became pure chaos. Sarah stood calmly. "All right, team. You know the drill. Ghost, take point. Razor, you're on crowd control. Make sure people don't trample each other getting out. Scales, cover our 6. Pip, you stay close to me." The cubs responded instantly. Their scales shifted to combat patterns, deep reds and blacks that made them look even more intimidating. But they moved with purpose and discipline rather than wild aggression. Ghost loped toward the main entrance, his powerful legs covering ground quickly. Razor positioned himself near a bottleneck where people were pushing and shoving, and his mere presence caused the crowd to organize itself more carefully. Scales backed towards Sarah, eyes scanning for threats from behind. Pip looked up at Sarah with large, worried eyes. She gave him a reassuring smile. "It's okay, little guy. This is what we've been practicing for." Together, they moved toward the exit. Sarah pulled up a holopad and checked the station schematics. Section 7 was 3 levels down and 2 sections over. Whatever had boarded the station was heading toward the reactor core, probably trying to disable the station's power. "Command, this is Chen," she said into her communicator. "I'm responding to the breach with my team. What are we dealing with?" "Lieutenant Commander, negative," came the response from Commander Yeltrix, a cautious Threen who ran station security. "You are not authorized to engage. We have security teams en route." "With respect, sir, I'm already halfway there, and your security teams are on the other side of the station. My team can handle this." "Your team is 4 Krath cubs." "Exactly. And there's nothing on this station better equipped to deal with a hostile threat." She did not wait for permission. Sarah had learned early in her military career that sometimes it was easier to apologize later than ask permission first. The cubs sensed her determination and matched her pace. They moved through the corridors like a well-oiled machine, each one knowing their role without needing constant instruction. They reached Section 7 within minutes. The hull breach was small, created by some kind of cutting torch rather than an explosion. Through the opening, Sarah could see the dark shape of a ship attached to the station's hull like a parasite. Smart, she thought. Cut in quietly, Avoid detection for as long as possible. Ghost growled, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the corridor. His excellent hearing had picked up something Sarah's human ears had missed. She held up a fist, the signal to halt, and the entire team froze. 3 figures emerged from the shadows ahead. They were krill pirates, insectoid species known for raiding stations and taking hostages. Their exoskeletons gleamed under the emergency lights, and they carried plasma weapons that could burn through armor. When they saw Sarah and the cubs, they raised their weapons. "Human, step aside," the lead krill clicked in galactic common. "We are here for the reactor. Interfere, and you will be eliminated." Sarah did not step aside. Instead, she smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something her opponent did not. "See, that's going to be a problem," she said, "because this station is under my protection, and my team takes protection very seriously." The krill hesitated. They had clearly expected resistance from station security, heavily armed guards in tactical armor. They had not expected 1 small human and 4 predator cubs. It did not compute in their tactical calculations. That hesitation cost them. "Team, engage," Sarah said calmly. "Non-lethal takedowns. Remember your training." The cubs exploded into action. Ghost moved first, his massive form covering the distance between them and the pirates in 3 powerful strides. He batted the plasma rifle from the lead krill's hands with 1 swipe of his claws, the weapon clattering across the floor. Razor came in from the side, using his tail to sweep the legs out from under another pirate. Scales lunged at the third, pinning him to the wall with careful precision. Claws extended just enough to pierce the exoskeleton without causing serious injury. The entire encounter lasted less than 10 seconds. 3 armed pirates were neutralized by cubs who were not even fully grown, and they had done it without killing anyone, exactly as Sarah had taught them. Pip stayed close to Sarah, ready to defend her if needed, but his services were not required. She walked forward and secured the pirates with magnetic restraints she pulled from her belt. The krill clicked and buzzed in their own language, clearly shocked and confused. "Security, this is Chen," she said into her communicator. "Section 7 is secure. 3 hostiles in custody awaiting pickup. No casualties." There was a long pause before Commander Yeltrix responded. "How did you accomplish this?" "I told you, sir. My team is very good at what they do." When station security arrived 10 minutes later, they found Sarah sitting calmly with her back against the wall while the cubs sat around her in their protective formation. The pirates were secured and docile, too shocked by their rapid defeat to cause trouble. Pip had his head resting on Sarah's lap, and she was scratching behind his head ridge while reading something on her holopad. Commander Yeltrix stared at the scene with all 3 of his eyes. "This is impossible." "It's really not," Sarah said. "You just have to understand them. The Krath aren't mindless killing machines. They're intelligent, social, and capable of incredible things when given proper guidance. But they are predators. So are humans," Sarah pointed out. "We're persistence predators. We have forward-facing eyes. We eat meat. But we also form communities, create art, and build civilizations. The Krath can do the same. They just needed someone willing to see past the scary exterior." Over the following weeks, word spread throughout the station about what had happened. The story grew with each retelling, as stories often do. Some versions had Sarah commanding an army of Krath. Others claimed she had single-handedly tamed the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The truth was simpler and somehow more impressive. Sarah had found 4 cubs who had been orphaned when their ship was attacked by raiders. The galactic authorities wanted to send them back to their homeworld, but Krath society was brutal. Orphans rarely survived. Instead, Sarah had vouched for them, taken responsibility for their care and training, and integrated them into station life. It had not been easy. The cubs had instincts that made them dangerous. They were stronger than most species, faster, and armed with natural weapons. But Sarah had patience that most people lacked. She worked with them every day, teaching them to control their strength, to read social cues from other species, to understand that not everything that moved was prey. She taught them that being a predator did not mean being a monster. The mess hall incident became a turning point. Other species began to see the cubs not as threats but as individuals. They watched as Pip struggled with using utensils designed for species without claws. They saw Razor's embarrassment when he accidentally broke things. They observed Ghost's protective instincts and Scales's curiosity about other cultures. Slowly, cautiously, people began to interact with them. A Zentari engineer showed Pip how to repair a power conduit, working patiently with the cub's clumsy claws. A Threen doctor examined Razor after he injured his tail and explained healing techniques in simple terms. A Valorian teacher, overcoming centuries of prey instinct, invited Scales to a cultural exchange program. The cubs blossomed under this attention. They learned, adapted, and grew. And through them, the station learned something valuable about humans. Humans did not see monsters where others saw terror. They saw potential. They saw individuals who could be more than their biology dictated. They looked at apex predators and saw cubs who needed guidance. They took the scariest species in the galaxy and made them into a team. 6 months after the mess hall incident, Sarah received commendations from the Galactic Council for her work. The cubs, now approaching adolescence, were offered positions in the Council's peacekeeping force. They would be the first Krath to serve in any official galactic capacity, a historic moment that would change how the galaxy viewed their entire species. On the day of the ceremony, Sarah stood with her team in the Grand Council chamber. The cubs wore specially designed uniforms, their scales displaying proud patterns of gold and silver. They stood at attention with military precision, a far cry from the clumsy youngsters who had once struggled to carry lunch trays. The head counselor, an ancient Zythian who had seen centuries of galactic history, addressed the assembly. Today we recognize not just the achievement of these 4 individuals, but the power of mentorship and understanding. Lieutenant Commander Chen has shown us that even the most fearsome among us can become heroes when given proper guidance. The chamber erupted in applause from dozens of species. Sarah looked at her team and felt a surge of pride. They had come so far from those early days when simply walking through a mess hall caused panic. Pip, ever the youngest, leaned close and chittered softly. It was his way of saying thank you. Sarah reached up and scratched behind his head ridge one more time. "You did this yourself, buddy. I just showed you the way." As they left the ceremony, the cubs surrounded Sarah in their protective formation, but now it felt different. They were not protecting her because she was weak. They were walking beside her because she was family. Because she had looked past their claws and teeth and scales to see who they could become. In a galaxy that feared them, one human had called them her team, and in doing so, she had changed everything.